And welcome back. Everyone wants to get the highest return on their investment, but do you know when something is too good to be true? Well, CPA Gary Opper, managing partner of Levy Opper LLC, is here with some information to make sure that we don't fall victim to Ponzi schemes. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
So what we've seen is that some of the highest return on your investment can be a fraudulent one, like a Ponzi scheme. So before we get into the whole, how to prevent it, can you tell us a little bit about Ponzi scheme? It's very interesting. I learned about it as well, that, it's actually a guy.
We discussed that earlier. Well, actually, there was a man, Charles Ponzi. He came to the United States in the early part of the last century. And around 1920, he'd been in various small schemes and whatever in crime and had been arrested several times. In fact, he was booted out of Canada. He came upon this idea that what he would do is you could buy international postal coupons in Europe, let's say for a penny, and in the United States you could sell them for 5 cents. So you could make 4 cents per postal coupon. And if you did it on a large scale, say $1 million, you could make $4 million. So he basically told people that, and they became interested, and he got a lot of investors. There's import restrictions on that, so you really couldn't do it. And in reality, he stole about $20 million, and he only bought about $30 worth of coupons. And basically, that's, he was very good at promoting himself,
right.
which is the root cause of Ponzi schemes, is that you have a very good promoter. They're very personable. They earn your trust, and then they fleece you.
So is that really prevalent? I mean, we've heard of Madoff. We've heard of other schemes like that, investment schemes, but is it really something that you or I could come in contact with?
Yes, we may not even realize it. It may be too expensive for us to invest in, so we don't invest in it, we don't investigate, or it may be something that we just don't follow up on. In 2008, there were, I think, 150 Ponzi schemes that were identified. In 2009, there were 40 Ponzi schemes identified. In 2008 was Madoff, so obviously it was a tremendous amount of, he scammed about $65 billion. In 2009, it was only about $16.5 billion of the, of the 40 people. The largest was Alan Stanford. Alan Stanford had the largest Ponzi scheme. And of course, Mr. Rothstein, which is also, unfortunately, a local character, was fleeced a lot of people down here. In fact, Mr. Madoff fleeced a lot of people from down here because
yes.
he has a residence, or he had a residence in Palm Beach.
Yeah.
And he had 2 of his cohorts in crime living in South Florida also.
So, you mentioned Madoff and just the characteristics that make a person like this and how people trust him. Is that really the way they're able to deceive so many people? Because we're not talking about the people who are being deceived are intelligent. They have an education. They've come across a lot of money. How can you deceive someone like that, which you would think would have, more of a plan for their money?
Yes. A lot of very sophisticated people have been deceived. You read about in the paper, and you wonder why. And what it boils down to is the schemester, the fraudster. He's very good at what he does. He earns your trust. He earns your loyalty. He probably runs a background check on you from what I've seen, and I've talked to people who have been part of the scam, and they tell me it seems like the person knows. They know the favorite wine. Somehow they find out where you were eating in a particular night. They show up. They invite you to their table. They give you wine and whatever, and you earn the trust. You become what appears to be a friendship, which, as you know, friendships are very few and far between. And you earn the trust, and then you kind of let your guard down, and you don't do the research you should do. In fact, there was a prominent man down here who's surrounded by attorneys and CPAs, and for whatever reason, he didn't refer to those people. He trusted Mr. Rothstein, and he invested money with Mr. Rothstein, and he lost, tens of millions of dollars.
So what can we do? What can you do to prevent, to avoid this from happening to you?
Well, I give an hour speech on that, but boiling it down to a nutshell, I always say there's 4 things you should go away with. One is, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. The hard part of that is when does good become too good? There's no bright line test. So you have to to just fill it out. And that leads to the second thing, which is what's your gut feeling. If you get a gut feeling, you know how if you're walking down the street and you just feel uncomfortable and you have that, well, that's an instinct that everyone has, and you should use it. If you feel like you shouldn't be investing, then you shouldn't be investing. A third thing is if you can't understand it, if somebody explains it to you and you can't understand it, and one of the things Peter Lynch said one time is if you can't draw what somebody's explaining to you with a pencil, with a crayon, then you shouldn't be investing. And the third thing is you should diversify. And obviously, hopefully you're not investing in a Ponzi scheme, but by not putting all your eggs in one basket, which is what a lot of people do, because it's such a high return, if you diversify across a wide market and don't put too much in any one investment, then if something does happen, whether it's a Ponzi scheme or just a decline in the market, then you won't be hurt as bad.
How do you research if you come across something that does look too good to be true or does sound too good to be true? How would you go about researching? Would you research that person or the investment that they're trying to, would you go about that?
Well, you really should, for whether you think it's too good to be true or not, you really should investigate everything. And you investigate it on two levels. You investigate the promoter, the person who's bringing you the investment, and you also investigate the investment itself. And to investigate the person, you can do that you should do it in two ways. And obviously with the internet, a vast amount of information is available. One of the things that you should do is find out what credentials they have, and then go back to whatever trade organizations they belong to and see, was there any complaints filed? Do they really have, if they say they're a CFP, do they really have a certified financial planner's credentials? If it's an insurance product, do they really have the insurance license they should have? Which brings up, in addition to going to trade groups, you also you can go to state and federal agencies. And the state and federal agencies, you're required to be licensed in most anything any investment that you sell. And you could be a CPA, a CFP, you could have an insurance license, a mortgage license, a Series 7, Series 6, depending on what type of stocks or bonds you're selling.
Did Madoff have any of that?
Yes, he did. In that case, the problem in his case was that he was the custodian and the manager. And you really should have a separate custodian and a separate manager. And what that basically means is the person who's actually doing your investments shouldn't be the one who has custody of your investments. So he had both, so nobody really knew what was going on. He was issuing statements and claiming that he had custody, he had all these investments. In what you should do, for instance, in my case, I have an investment company that I use out of California, and they make the investment, but the investments are held by TD Ameritrade. So TD Ameritrade presumably is a large, obviously there still could be fraud and whatever, but presumably they're a large company. They have lots of insurance. They have lots of safeguards. So they have monthly statements that they send me, and also it's called Churchill Management. They also have statements they send me, and obviously I can compare the two. And the person who's actually making the decisions on the investments doesn't have custody of the stocks. The same way, whereas if you're investing with let's say somebody says, well, you should buy this bond. Well, you can buy the bond, and the person that has custody of the bond should be a different company, unless it's a major company. So there's a lot of smaller bond companies that are honest and ethical. But just as a safeguard, you should probably take that and put that with a larger company, and so you're getting a statement from someone who didn't make the investment.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Gary. Really good information, and we need all the help we can get in these day and ages when there's so much scam and schemes going out there. We're going to take a quick break right now, but when we return, find out about the noble cause that's got this UM student living in a tent. Did you know the Coral Gables Museum was going to be called the Muse? We'll uncover other interesting facts of how the Coral Gables Museum came to be. Plus, the city celebrates a birthday. We'll be right back.